Saint Alexander I was a Roman. He is believed to have been martyred under the Roman Emperor Trajan or Hadrian. According to the Liber Pontificalis, it was Alexander I who inserted the narration of the Last Supper, the Kypridi, into the liturgy of the Mass. The introduction of the customs of using blessed water mixed with salt for the purification of Christian homes from evil influences, as well as that of mixing water with the sacramental wine, are attributed to Pope Alexander I. A later tradition holds that in the reign of the Emperor Hadrian, Alexander I converted the Roman governor Hermes by miraculous means, together with his entire household of 1,500 people. Quirinus of Neuss, who was Alexander's supposed jailer, and Quirinus's daughter Balbina of Rome were also among his converts. Alexander is said to have seen a vision of the infant Jesus. His remains are said to have been transferred to Freising in Bavaria, Germany, in AD 834. Saint Sixtus I was a Roman of Greek descent. His feast is celebrated on the 6th of April. Sixtus is derived from sextus, Latin for sixth. The Holy See's Annuario Pontificio identifies him as a Roman by birth, who served from 117 or 119 to 126 or 128, with Eusebius giving two different sets of years. His father's name was Pastor. Like most of his predecessors, Sixtus I was believed to have been buried near Peter's grave on Vatican Hill, although there are differing traditions concerning where his body lies today. In a life, there is a Romanesque crypt, which houses the relics of Pope Sixtus I, brought there by Rainulf III. Clement X gave some of his relics to Cardinal de Retz, who placed them in the Abbey of St. Michael in Lorraine. Sixtus I instituted several Catholic liturgical and administrative traditions. According to the Liber Pontificalis, he passed the following 3 ordinances: that none but sacred ministers are allowed to touch the sacred vessels, that bishops who have been summoned to the Holy See shall, upon their return, not be received by their diocese except on presenting apostolic letters, that after the preface in the Mass, the priest shall recite the Sanctus with the people. Saint Telesphorus was a Greek. The Carmelites venerate Telesphorus as a patron saint of the order, since some sources depict him as a hermit living on Mount Carmel. He is also a martyr according to the ancient testimony of Irenaeus. Telesphorus is traditionally considered as the 8th bishop of Rome in succession after St. Peter. The Liber Pontificalis mentions that he had been an anchorite or hermit monk prior to assuming office. According to the testimony of Irenaeus, he suffered a glorious martyrdom. Although most early popes are called martyrs by sources such as the Liber Pontificalis, dating to the 3rd century at earliest, Telesphorus is the first to whom Irenaeus, writing considerably earlier in around 180 AD, gives this title, thus making his martyrdom the earliest attested martyrdom of Pope after St. Peter. Eusebius places the beginning of his pontificate in the 12th year of the reign of Emperor Hadrian, 128 to 129, and gives the date of his death as being in the 1st year of the reign of Antoninus Pius, 138 to 139. The tradition of Christmas midnight masses, the celebration of Easter on Sundays, the keeping of a 7-week Lent before Easter, and the singing of the Gloria are usually attributed to his pontificate. Saint Hyginus was a Greek. Tradition holds that during his papacy, he determined the various prerogatives of the clergy and defined the grades of the ecclesiastical hierarchy. Hyginus instituted godparents at baptism to assist the baptized during their Christian life. He also decreed that all churches be consecrated. He is said to have died a martyr. According to the Liber Pontificalis, Hyginus was a Greek by birth. Irenaeus says that the Gnostic Valentinus came to Rome in Hyginus's time, remaining there until Anicetus became pontiff. Cerdo, another Gnostic and predecessor of Marcion of Sinope, also lived at Rome in the reign of Hyginus. By confessing his errors and recanting, he succeeded in obtaining readmission into the church, but eventually fell back into heresy and was expelled from the church. The Liber Pontificalis also relates that this pope organized the hierarchy and established the order of ecclesiastical precedence. This general observation recurs also in the biography of Pope Hormisdas, but has no historical value. According to Louis Duchesne, the writer probably referred to the lower orders of the clergy. At his death, he was buried on the Vatican Hill near St. Peter's tomb. His feast is celebrated on the 11th of January. St. Pius I was a Roman. He is considered to have opposed both the Valentinians and Gnostics during his papacy. A native of Aquileia, he would act as pope during the reigns of Antoninus Pius and Marcus Aurelius. He would officiate that Easter be held only on Sunday. He is also said to have built one of the oldest churches in Rome, Santa Pudenziana. He is the only pope to have his remains be kept outside of Europe. Saint Anicetus was the first Greco-Aramaean or Syrian pope. According to Irenaeus, it was during his pontificate that the aged Polycarp of Smyrna, a disciple of John the Evangelist, visited Rome to discuss the celebration of Easter with Anicetus. Polycarp and his church of Smyrna celebrated the crucifixion on the 14th day of Nisan, which coincides with Pesach, or Passover, regardless of which day of the week upon this date fell, while the Roman Church celebrated Easter on Sunday, the weekday of Jesus' resurrection. The two did not agree on a common date, but Anicetus conceded to Polycarp and the Church of Smyrna the ability to retain the date to which they were accustomed. The controversy was to grow heated in the following centuries. The Christian historian Hegesippus also visited Rome during Anicetus's pontificate. This visit is often cited as a sign of the early importance of the Roman See. Anicetus actively opposed the Gnostics and Marcionism. The Liber Pontificalis records that Anicetus decreed that priests are not allowed to have long hair as opposed to the Gnostics. According to church tradition, Anicetus suffered martyrdom during the reign of Emperor Lucius Verus. The Liber Pontificalis states he was buried in the cemetery of Callistus. Saint Soter was a Greek. He is known for declaring that marriage was valid only as a sacrament blessed by a priest, and also for formally inaugurating Easter as an annual festival in Rome. The Montanist movement, which originated in Asia Minor, made its way to Rome and Gaul in the second half of the 2nd century during the reign of Eleuterus. During the violent persecution at Lyon in 177, local confessors wrote from their prison concerning the new movement to the Asiatic and Phrygian communities as well as to Pope Eleuterus. The bearer of their letter to the Pope was Irenaeus, soon to become Bishop of Lyon. Tertullian records that a Roman bishop sent some conciliatory letters to the Montanists, but based on the complaints of Praxeas concerning the prophets themselves and their churches, and by insistence on the decisions of the bishop's predecessors, forced the pontiff to recall these letters. The Praedestinatorum Haeresis states that Holy Soter, Pope of the city, wrote against them a book, as did the master Apollonius of Ephesus. Against these wrote the priest Tertullian of Carthage, who in all ways wrote well, wrote first, and wrote incomparably. In this alone did reprehensibly, that he defended Montanus. At Rome, the Gnostics and Marcionites continued to preach against the Catholic Church. Saint Eleutherius was a Greek. He rejected dietary laws practiced by Gnostics and Montanists. Another edition credited Eleutherius with receiving a letter from Lucius, king of Britain, or king of the Britons, declaring an intention to convert to Christianity. In the 9th century history of the Britons, traditionally credited to Nennius, the account relates that a mission from the Pope baptized Lucius, the Britannic king, with all the petty kings of the whole Britannic people. According to the Liber Pontificalis, Pope Eleutherius died on the 24th of May and was buried on the Vatican Hill near the body of Peter the Apostle. Later tradition has his body moved to the church of San Giovanni della Pigna, near the Pantheon. In 1591, his remains were again moved to the church of Santa Susanna at the request of Camilla Peretti, the sister of Pope Sixtus V. Saint Victor I was a Roman Berber. He was the first pope to be born on the African continent. According to an anonymous writer quoted by Eusebius, Victor excommunicated Theodotus of Byzantium for teaching that Christ was a mere man. However, he is best known for his role in the Quartodeciman controversy, where, according to Eusebius, he would be rebuked by Irenaeus and others. Prior to his elevation, a difference in dating the celebration of the Christian Passover Easter between Rome and the bishops of Asia Minor had been tolerated by both the Roman and Eastern churches. These events and Victor's response to Polycrates' letter are recorded by Socrates Scholasticus as such. In Asia Minor, most people kept the 14th day of the moon, disregarding the Sabbath. Yet they never separated from those who did otherwise until Victor, Bishop of Rome, influenced by too ardent a zeal, fulminated a sentence of excommunication against the Quartodecimans in Asia. This led to a sharp rebuke by many prominent bishops, including the most well-known Irenaeus. Saint Zephyrinus was a Roman. He is known for combating heresies and defending the divinity of Christ. During the 18-year pontificate of Zephyrinus, the young church endured persecution under the Emperor Septimius Severus until his death in the year 211. To quote Alban Butler, this holy pastor was the support and comfort of the distressed flock. According to St. Optatus, Zephyrinus also combated new heresies and apostasies, chief of which were Marcion, Praxius, Valentine, and the Montanists. Eusebius insists that Zephyrinus fought vigorously against the blasphemies of the two Theodotuses, who in response treated him with contempt, but later called him the greatest defender of the divinity of Christ. Although he was not physically martyred for the faith, his suffering, both mental and spiritual, during his pontificate have earned him the title of martyr, a title that was repealed 132 years after his death.